by Doctor. I'm really not like a massive narcissist, but if there's a book with my name in it, was I totally like, yes, just keep going with the crazy? Totally. And it was more than you needed to know. Rainiest day. We have to honk our horns. Okay. Yeah, I feel like that's where it is. Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse, and welcome to a very belated part 2 of what I read in February. So full disclosure, I kind of thought I already filmed this video, and then I was gearing up to film my March part 1, and I was like, yeah, I totally never closed the loop on this. And if you've been following me for a bit, you know that there was a business trip, there were time changes, there was just life got in the way, and here we are. So this is going to be short-ish, I hope, for everybody's sake, since it's so late. But I wound up reading 4 books in the second half of February, and I did want to talk about them. So 3 here, 1 ebook, which was actually an audiobook, and let's get into it. The first book I'm going to talk about is the audiobook I listened to, and this is Building a Non-Anxious Life by Dr. John Deloney. So if you watched my Life Lately catch-up, I did talk about this book in that video, and I finished it, so I'm going to talk about it just a little bit more. But this is a self-help book, so I find that these books are so personal and subjective whether or not you're going to like it. But if you're looking for something about anxiety, about kind of getting a hold on things, whether it's physically, emotionally, mentally, and looking for someone who, I did not find him soapboxy, I did not find him preachy, I did not find him condescending. He came off to me as very relatable, very down to earth. I actually came across him on a decluttering podcast I was listening to, and I really liked his style, just to say, I liked his delivery. And again, he just seemed like a regular person talking about real life things in a very regular way. So he's got all the degrees and all the letters after his name and everything, but he doesn't come across as like, he's not talking in such scientific levels that you can't understand him, or at least for me. I mean, I guess he talked to me like a person, which I appreciate. So, and he talked to me because he was in my ears. But anyway, so this is, my light bulb is making a really weird crackling noise. Hold on. I have a feeling it's going to pop. Hold on. Okay, that was sufficiently weird. It's one of those 3 setting lights, and it just didn't seem to like that setting. Okay, back to the book. So it says, nearly half of the U.S. population reports their lives are affected by anxiety, stress, or burnout. Anxiety is everywhere. So this is a follow-up to his first book, Redefining Anxiety, which I didn't read, but it says he walks you through, I'm stumbling, my friends. He walks you through the 6 daily choices you need to make to build a non-anxious life. So the core of this book focuses on these 6 principles, which is choosing reality, connection, freedom, health and healing, mindfulness, and belief. So like every self-help book I've read, there are things that resonated, there's things that did not, and there's some things that did not apply at all, and I skipped past them. So like a lot of times when people are talking about like their children's anxiety and things like that, I don't have children, I tend to skip past some of those parts, but there also can be some nuggets within those conversations. So again, do you. But I really, most significantly, I would say, connected with the finding freedom, which his perspective was freedom from your finances, freedom from your physical stuff, like all the things you are beholden to. And I talked about it in that Life Lately video where I talked about how, like, I'm always pointing at my books, everything in your home is a decision, is a to-do, like you are beholden to everything that you have. So talking about simplifying, decluttering, not putting your head in the sand about where you are financially, how can you work your way out of debt if you have debt? How can you get control on your finances, budgeting, kind of all these different things. So all these things that you are not free from, and earning, gaining, working towards freedom from these things can help minimize anxiety. So there were some good takeaways in this book. I would actually love to re-listen to portions of it, and I think that's what I'm going to do. But all in, I would say it's one of the better books I have listened to. Again, I enjoyed him. He reads it himself. There are some resources you can get online, which he talks about in the book, and journaling prompts, and again, I'm really just kind of slowly trying to chip away at different things and figure out what works. And I'm sure you guys can tell I'm a very anxious person. So I'm always looking for tips and tricks that I can use in different ways in different things that are going to work for me. So that is this book. I enjoyed it. If you're looking for one, I would definitely give it a go because I think there's a lot of value to it. So that is that. Now let's dig into some books. So, I mean, that was a real book, but you know what I mean. Okay, so after the beginning of the month, and I feel like maybe even the end of January when I was reading some real dark stuff, I kind of made a turn. I sort of had like a weird reading month, and this is the magic of the mood reader. So the first book, this is not the weird one. This is The Secret Adversary by Agatha Christie. I am doing Read with Christie 2024. This was the February book pick. So this is the first book in the Tommy and Tuppence series. I had not read this one before, and I really enjoyed this book. So this is, Tommy and Tuppence were childhood friends. They sort of meet up again. They are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They are in 5 books together, which she writes over the course of her career, and Tommy and Tuppence age within the books, which I think is kind of cool. So I actually have all of the books because my dad had them and he gave them to me. So eventually I will read them all. But this one says, Tommy and Tuppence are young, in love, and flat broke. Restless for excitement, they decide to embark on a daring business scheme, Young Adventurers Limited. Quote, "We'll do anything, go anywhere." But they get more than they bargained for when their first assignment for the sinister Mr. Whittington draws them into a diabolical conspiracy. It isn't long before they find themselves plunged into more danger than they ever could have imagined, a danger that could put an abrupt end to their business and their lives. So I really had a fun time with this. I would say, the risk of sounding ridiculous, it was very Agatha Christie to me. And it like just felt reminiscent of her books. It's one of her books, so I know how ridiculous this sounds. But I would say like classic Christie. How about that? So what's interesting about this is we get Tommy and Tuppence's point of view, but they wind up getting hired to find this missing woman. And then like the story breaks and we see, my voice crack, we see the story through what Tommy goes off and does, and then what Tuppence goes off and does, and we've got some other characters that are mixed in. And I was really interested in the kind of like the style of the book in that way. And I feel like she does that with other books too. Like you'll get a lot of story and then Poirot will come in, so like he's not there the entire time. I'm learning more and more about her style. I'm seeing different similarities between some of the books that I've read. And it's really interesting kind of seeing where it all started, for lack of a better phrase. So I want to say this was her 3rd or 4th book that she wrote. This one came out in 1922. And they definitely have kind of like a Nick and Nora Charles from the Thin Man vibe to them. So there's like a little bit of, there's a lot of humor. There's like some good humor in this. There's, you know, the espionage. They are both just back from the war, or maybe like a year or so after the war. And I found kind of a similar feel to Frankie and Bobby from Why Didn't They Ask Evans? So a bit of a different storyline, obviously, but sort of that same banter. And again, as we saw with Anne from The Man in the Brown Suit, Tuppence is such a strong female character. So she's not just this kind of like quiet, shy wallflower who's letting Tommy lead the way. The same as Nora Charles isn't the same way. The same as Frankie wasn't the same way. And Why Didn't They Ask Evans? So I really enjoy Agatha Christie's portrayal of female characters. I've read a lot of her Poirot books, so I feel like he's always kind of center stage. And not that there aren't strong women in those books, but he's always kind of the focus. So I had a fun time with this. I wasn't quite sure where it was going, which is totally fine. I don't know that I ever would have solved the mystery. I definitely fell for the red herrings, as we were supposed to, I suppose. And of course, in hindsight, you could see where the clues were that I didn't quite pick up on. But I enjoyed it. I had a fun time with it. I'm really enjoying this reading journey I'm on with her. So I have not yet started the March book, which is The Mystery on the Blue Train, but that's a story for March. So anyway, Tommy and Tuppence, yay for them. And then I went into 2 backlist books. So if you guys saw my unhaul video, you saw me talk about Follow Me by Kathleen Barber. And I decided to keep the book because I was excited about it. And also there was a character named Audrey. So I'm just nothing if not. I'm really not like a massive narcissist, but if there's a book with my name in it, I was doing my Sisters in Crime. I should look up the name of Malika's book. I was doing my Sisters in Crime write-in yesterday, and we were talking about names and pen names and like why people use them. And this other woman in the chat was talking about how like people never get her name right, and she doesn't have a particularly difficult name. But I was saying people seem to have a really hard time with Audrey also, which in this day and age, I mean, I get it when I was a kid and everybody was like, why do you have an old lady name? But now I feel like it's a little bit more common and also not fundamentally difficult. But I get a lot of Andrea, which drives me nuts. And then I work with a woman named Ashley, and a lot of people, even when we're on the call together, call us both Ashley. So I guess it's just too hard. I don't know. But anyway, so our host, let me get this in front of me before I just keep spitballing. So Malika Narayanan was talking, and she was saying her main character in her book is named Audrey. So the name of her book, I'll just pop it here in case anyone's interested. In the Dark, I See You. So I haven't read it yet, but I'm like, oof, I need to read this. Because A, she's one of my sisters in crime, and B, she named a character named Audrey. So anyway, that's a whole sidebar for that. So I kept it follow me, and I read it, which was the deal I made with myself. And I had a good time with it. So it wasn't, I feel like, here's a trap. If you're a hardcore all the time thriller reader, it wasn't necessarily anything I hadn't seen before, but I was engaged in the characters. I really enjoyed where the story went. I definitely was surprised about one thing, maybe two things. I was a little bit surprised. I think I just got the tripod. So I was intrigued, and I was listening to somebody else review this who is an influencer who didn't feel that influencers were accurately portrayed, but I'm not an influencer, so what do I know? So anyway, this is Everyone Wants New Followers Until They Follow You Home. So Audrey has just moved from New York City to DC. She's gotten a job at the Smithsonian, and she is also an Instagram, I don't know if she's quite a sensation, but she has like a couple 100,000 followers posting all of her stuff about her life. So she's got people following her. So Audrey's trying to impress her new boss. She's working on an exhibit at the Smithsonian. Her best friend from college, her sorority sister, lives in DC, so she's super jazzed about that. She's got a built-in friend there. And then her ex-boyfriend from college, who she can't quite resist, is also in town, which kind of is not the worst thing ever for her. It's a little bit of a cherry on top. So we get to see the dynamic between all of them. So they've got that college history, but they haven't been together for like 10 years, and now we're seeing them in present day. So Audrey's best friend, who lives in DC, is Kat. Kat is an attorney. She's got like a super crazy busy job. She's working towards partner, and Audrey is a little bit needy for attention. So we start to get the kind of like the rub and the push and pull between the two of them, because Kat wants to be there for her. She sort of has like a little bit of like a worrywart way about her, where she's concerned about like the apartment Audrey's living in because she's got like the shadiest upstairs neighbor. She's not totally jazzed that Audrey is with her garbage ex-boyfriend from college. So she's a little bit kind of momming her, but Audrey is also so eager for Kat to come out and hang out with her and introduce her to things and like see things around town and do stuff together. So we get to see the dynamic in their relationship. And then the overarching hitch is that Audrey appears to have a secret admirer whose stalking from a distance is starting to get closer and closer. So we've got some suspects. We've got some suspect stuff going on. I think I mentioned this. I don't know if it was my Goodreads review or my Instagram review. I feel like they're usually one and the same. I am super glad I do not live in my Boston brownstone anymore, which had the alley behind it. If anyone's familiar with like Back Bay and South End and stuff like that, you've got all those alleys like in between the brownstones, which was always kind of creepy things. It's usually things that go squeak in the night, not things that go bump in the night, but I was glad not to be having an alley behind where I live right now. So I enjoyed it. Like I said, it was kept my attention. I wasn't quite sure what was going on. We get multiple POVs. I mean, you know she's getting stalked, so like you know what's going on, but like you're not quite sure who's the what and how it's all happening. But what's really unsettling is kind of in a You by Carolyn Kempness way, we do get her stalker's POV, who is just him to us, and sort of the depths and the capabilities people can go to stalk people. So once again, like real unsettled about social media, real unsettled about life online, things people can find out about you. Like, it definitely gives the chills ick factor with all of that. So I feel like if you are just looking for like a fun, bingey kind of a thriller, this is a great book. I feel like if you're new to the genre, it might even be more enjoyable because it's not of my typical dark and messed up fashion, but there are some good twists to it. But it's just, if you're into DC, a little bit of a toxic, challenging female friendship, I would say. And, you know, making choices. Making choices all over the place. So that's Follow Me. I'm glad I kept it. I'm glad I pulled it out of the pile and read it. And there you go. So I did it. I did what I said I was going to do. Look at me. Look at me. And then the last book I wound up reading is Social Creature by Tara Isabella Burton. So this one is like crazy shiny. Sorry, it's like a super metallic cover. So when I was going through my books for the unhaul, I obviously went through a lot of books and came across this one and I was like, oh, I need to read this book. I kept saying I was going to read it and I haven't read it. So I wound up pulling it at the same time. I was never planning to unhaul it. I wanted to read it first. I wasn't going to just blindly unhaul it. And I wound up reading it. So kind of keeping a promise to myself to read some of the older books. So this is kind of similar to Follow Me in the sense that it deals with the digital age, but this is like a talented Mr. Ripley for the digital age is how it's pitched. So I do feel like you get a little bit more than you need at the beginning, or maybe it's not even here. Like I'm looking at this, I think it was online. I saw somebody post something like in their blurb and it was more than you needed to know. Rainiest day. We have to honk our horns. Okay. So this is set in New York City, which I always love me a New York City book. And what timeline are we in? This is an older book. So this came out in 2018. So I feel like this book takes place in 2016 and 2017. When I was first reading it, I was like, oh, another throwback book. And then I was like, no, it's just an older book that I'm reading now. I had thrifted this one, so it's an old library book in case anyone's getting glimpses at the inside. That was not me. It came that way. Okay, so I would argue the inside cover tells me more than I wanted to know, even though we find it out pretty quickly in the book. So I'm going to not tell you everything that happens in the inside cover of the book. But when this book opens, it is New Year's Eve and Lavinia and Louise are going to a party in Chelsea. So Lavinia lives on the Upper East Side. Her younger sister is being tutored by Lavinia. And it says, Louise has known Lavinia for 10 days. They've been the best 10 days of her life. So they drink champagne, they party, they are both writers, they have dreams, they make promises to each other, and they form a very fast, not entirely healthy friendship between the two of them. And Lavinia kind of draws Louise into her world and into her life. And Lavinia's world is like all these ridiculously rich Upper East, Upper West Side, early 20s people with money, kids with like big family money, very elite colleges, very elite educations, some snobbery, some entitlement, exposure to like the best parties, the best openings, drinks everywhere, sort of money is no object kind of a thing, which could not be further from Louise's life. So she kind of gets her foot into this door and Lavinia welcomes her into her world because Lavinia is a little bit lonely. Her parents are off in Europe. Like it's just her and her younger sister. And she's kind of looking for someone to hang with, live this life with, have a good time with. So we get to see this friendship, which again, not entirely healthy, and choices they make and other such things are not entirely healthy. But it's about obsession. And again, if you know anything about the talented Mr. Ripley, you would know a little bit about kind of maybe what is happening here with Louise. But it definitely was not totally what I thought it was going to be. And it's like, it's glitzy and it's dark and it's kind of the lengths that people will go to for the things that they really want. And is it all totally plausible? Maybe. But I had a really good time with it. I feel like I'm being like super vague on purpose. Like it definitely was creepy and I kind of think I expected it to be more like Gossip Girly type of stuff, but it's definitely like a different like at times sort of like this seedy darkness. At other times there's like just some, like I said, like the entitled gross behavior of some people. And Louise is really just embracing all of these opportunities that have kind of fallen at her feet, because she is like, whatever is underneath being down on your luck, you know, she lives alone in this apartment, like way out in Queens. She doesn't have a lot of money. She doesn't have a lot of friends. She doesn't really have a good, great family relationship necessarily. She's got her own sort of background that she is keeping kind of quiet. And she just wants to live this great life and live this big life in New York and be a writer. And again, some opportunities start to present themselves to her, and she is kind of willing to do whatever it takes to get them and to take advantage of them. So I love me a toxic female friendship, which was one of the things about this book that really grabbed me from the jump and like why I bought it in the first place. And it's well, I mean, it's dark. It's dark. If you're here for the dark friendship, this is not light. This is not Gossip Girl. This is not funny in any kind of way. Like, it's definitely a lot of weightiness to this, but I had a good time with it. And I always love a book that's set in New York City. And, you know, New York has a bright side and a dark side like every other place does. But I had a good time with it. I thought it was interesting how it was done. I liked how things played out in this. And I was also listening to somebody review this one. So I've been doing like a super deep dive on the very old episodes of Bad on Paper. So you guys have heard me talk about that podcast with Becca Freeman and Olivia Mentor. But it used to be Becca and Grace Atwood started the podcast together. So I've been listening to some of the older episodes with Grace. So they talk about books, they do book clubs, other different things like that. And they were talking about this book. And some of like Grace didn't think some of what happened in the end of this book was necessary. I was here for it personally. So was it necessary? Maybe not. Was I totally like, yes, just keep going with the crazy? Totally. So I enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed it. It's definitely a very interesting study about losing ourselves within our friendships. And I think about those like crazy fever dream toxic friendships that you can get into. And I say this as someone who has been there, not in this kind of a way, but how easily you can get absorbed into a friendship and that dynamic and that like that tight, close relationship that happens. And I just was totally here for it. So anyway, totally enjoyed it. Glad I read it. The upside to doing a little bit of an unhaul is I read 2 books that had been on my shelf for far too long that I had not read yet. So there you go. This is choppy. This is choppy. That's why this is going to be a bit of a bonus video. So there you go. For the rest of what I read in February, I will link the part 1 video if you guys haven't seen it and you want to check that out. Part of, I feel like the highlight of that is me trying to talk about Night Watching, which was the sinister home invasion book that I read at the beginning of the month that definitely is still lingering with me, but I will continue to recommend it over and over again. And every single person who commented that they've also read it or are going to read it, I don't know why, it just makes me so happy. But like, that is a book I feel like everybody needs to be shouting about it because it was just so well done. And just, yeah, listen to part 1 to hear me talk more about that. But okay, I said short. This is short-ish, maybe, hopefully. Okay, I'm gonna go. I hope everyone's doing great. So sorry it took me like a dog's age to get this one out here. And I will see you guys in the next video, which will be coming sooner than later. So I'll see you in that one. Thanks for being here, guys, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.